Well, joining us now are the president of the Hindu Forum of Britain, Trupti Patel, and Sunny Hundel, a political commentator who writes for the online blog OpenDemocracy. Welcome to you both. Trupti, can I start by asking you, good evening, the Prime Minister's obviously paying quite a price to try and get these reforms through. What's the benefit? What's the prize as far as the government is concerned?
It's not just the government. This reform's been needed for a long period of time, and previous governments actually commissioned the Swaminathan Committee and various other committees, where it came out that how can we make sure that our farmers actually do better than what they've been subjected to? How can they come out of the poverty trap? How can they come out of not being in the shackles of the agriculture produce mandis that you mentioned earlier on? So long before the present Indian government started the government, it was actually in the pipeline, and many states actually made those rules so that, for example, if we look at if Pepsi company wanted potatoes for the crisps, or if any other like wine for the beer, or any other commodities, there were certain routes, but everything was shackled in terms of very rigid regulations. And when you look around the world, when you look at the agricultural laws of this country, modernization is required to meet the need of the hour, and modernization is something that should be helpful to everyone. And this is what these laws are. So if you look back, even there are there are newspaper clippings, there are video recordings of the many people who are actually objecting to these laws now. So
Sunny Hundel, let's bring Sunny in here, Trupti. Unexceptional in the sense that it's intended to improve productivity, take Indian agriculture into the modern age. So why is it politically dangerous, do you think, for Narendra Modi to press ahead with this?
Good evening. I mean, look, it's a bit like, I think, putting a corner shop next to Tesco and saying to them, you know, go and compete against each other. There's no doubt that India's, farm laws and its whole agriculture system needs modernization. But the problem is most people who are farmers in India, and I think there's a strong UK connection here, because you have to remember there's 500,000 Punjabis in this country, and they have very strong family links to Punjab. That's why they're angry about these issues. The problem is that you're putting these small businessmen and saying to them, go and compete and work with these giant multinationals. And what's going to happen? What they're going to do is they're going to squeeze the small farmers. And I think that's the biggest worry for a lot of them in India. And that's why actually there's been so much interest on this issue, even in the UK, because, like I said, there's a 500,000 Punjabis in this country, in Canada, in the United States. And all these people have family links to what's going on in India. They're interested in, the political affairs over there, but they're interested in what their families, how they're being affected by this whole situation. And most farmers across the country are saying, this is going to be bad for us. You're putting us at the mercy of multinational corporations.
Trupti, that's got to be a point, hasn't it? People will just be rolled under the steamroller of big agribusiness once these traditional protections are removed.
Well, if you think about it, there are over 100 million farmers in India, and how many are protesting? See, what you got to look at it as well is that it's not just the Punjabis who have got the links to the farming. There are Gujaratis, there are Biharis, there are Kashmiris, there are all sorts of Indians. All over Indians living in this country have farming roots in India. So it is not fair to actually say that only Punjabis. And if you look at the whole situation, out of 100 million farmers, if less than 1% are actually talking against it, then there is some concern. And the government actually talked to them 11 times. And the argument being put forward is that you got to repeal this first. Now you tell me first, is there any government in the world that is, when they put a law in with both houses of the parliament, without any objections or obstructions, with all proper process followed, then how can a handful of people say that repeal this law? No, the best thing is really to sit down together, to mediate together, to go point by point and remove those points that you don't like it. There is no agitation is okay, but you need to negotiate to achieve something. And it's not in the interest of your country or people living abroad, like all of us.
Sunny,
to actually
let me bring you in.
Agitation.
Sorry, Trupti, but just picking up on your last point about the need to sit down and negotiate, I just wondered to what extent the intercommunal dynamic of this is going to complicate those negotiations, because it's obvious looking at the footage that a lot of Sikhs are involved in this protest. And I wondered to what extent that community feels that these laws are working particularly against their interests.
Well, it's not just Sikhs who are getting involved in these protests. There have been protests all over the country, from the south to the east to the west and the north, where Punjab is. But, actually what's happening over there is going to have a huge impact over here as well. And that's because, what the government is doing now is trying to make this into a Sikh protest and say that these people are being led by extremists and they're Sikhs and they're trying to take the government into, ruin the government. And what it's doing is it's turning this whole issue into a Sikhs versus Hindu issue as a way to delegitimize the protests. And that's dangerous because, like I said, there's 500,000 Sikhs in this country, there's 500,000 Hindus in this country.
Do you fear violence in this country, Sunny, as a result of this?
Yes, if there's violence in India, there's going to be violence in this country. That's what worries me. And I think that we, as the government here, have a duty to tell the Indian government to calm down some of its rhetoric, because it's really hate speech over there and it's really dangerous.
Final answer, Trupti. Fair point there from Sunny. A need to cool this atmosphere now?
Well, absolutely, in a sense that you need to talk, both sides need to come on the table, both sides need to start talking sense, okay? I don't think that in this country, we work on an interfaith level, we work on a local level, regional level, we work with the Hindu-Sikh community is not separated. Because if you look back, the roots is in the Sanatan Vedic culture, as we call it, on the subcontinent. So I can't see that the two communities could be at the loggerhead. What we need to make...
That's not true. It's actually happening. It's already been happening over the last 4 years. Since
no, what we need to make sure... May I finish, please?
I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, we've got to end it there. Sunny Hundel, Trupti Patel, I'm so sorry. We've just got to end it there. We're out of time.